Okay, well, people are still joining in. I'm kicking it off and then leaving it to our main speaker today. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to May edition of Stuttgart Power Platform User Group. So, as always, this meeting is recorded and the recording will be posted to our Power Platform User Group Stuttgart YouTube channel. So if you are not consent with a recording, feel free to leave and come back to our YouTube channel again. Also, on our Meetup channel, you'll see all the announcements as well as on Twitter and LinkedIn. So feel free to join and track what's coming. Also, this week I'm with you, Augustin, and next week Christian will be with you. So our goal, as always, connect you with the best speakers out there with regards to Power BI, Power Platform in general. And we try to keep up the pace and doing it weekly. And I think we are the only user group out there doing it at a weekly pace. Also, if you missed it yesterday, so Data Jazzers, so a different podcast than this one, we are doing it every second Tuesday of months, myself and Nicola. And yesterday we had a great chat with Jay from Microsoft. Lots of interesting news in this podcast, lots of interesting ideas that Jay shared, lots of announcements on what's coming up in Power BI. So go and check Data Jazzers YouTube channel for a recording or Data Jazzers on LinkedIn. And next week, we probably don't have one of the few weeks we are missing in our weekly schedule, but week after that, 25th of May, Ben Ferry is with us and introducing us to Deneb visualizations. So it will be really interesting session. Subscribe and join there. And not to take too much time today, it's really a pleasure to welcome Pedro with us. So two of us met, I think, before Corona, when still all the conferences were in person.
Indeed.
In Munich. So it's good to see you after quite some time. And Pedro today will talk about Power BI goals. Pedro, welcome once again and glad to have you. You feel free to share your screen.
Really glad to be here with you guys. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in this session. Like Agustin mentioned, we met a couple of years ago, I think about 3 years ago, in a very nice conference. I miss also the physical conferences. It's good at the same time that maybe if it would be a physical, you wouldn't be able to attend. So I hope that you come here today. And it's very good also to be here in a user group. So that way we can do something more personalized for you. So don't hesitate at any point during the presentation. If you have any question, raise your hand, open the mic. This will be an interactive session. Feel free to ask me any question, okay? So I'll share my screen. You can confirm. Okay, so our topic of the day, Power BI goals, the ultimate piece for top management. I wanted to bring this session because I think that it's a hidden gem. Not very too many people are using already this feature, and I think it's really powerful and a lot of use cases. So we'll cover a bit that during the day. And why do I mention also for top management? That's one thing I will try to explain during the session. So about me, I am a data team leader at Natixis, a French investment bank and part of one of the largest banks in Europe. We work with a lot of data, not only financial data, but actually data from the IoT of the buildings, from HR, from a lot of different data domains. It's really exciting domains. I'm a new MVP in a data platform awarded this year. I've been working with Power BI since almost the very beginning of it, around later than 2015, I'd say in 2016. I'm Microsoft certified trainer too, and a really enthusiast. And I'm also the leader of the user group in Portugal, so another friendly user group. We have a large group in Portugal with 3,500 people around, and we organize also meetups, not weekly, but we try to organize at least once a month. So feel free to drop by, sometimes in person, sometimes also in a hybrid mode. You have my contacts. I will also leave them there. In the end, if there isn't any question that we are not able to discuss a little bit during the session. But once again, I incentivize, if you have any question, open the mic. You can interrupt me at any point, and I'll try to explain it. We want to deep dive and give you details and take something out of this session, okay? So let's get started. First, to explain you what are our objectives today. To tell you, why do Power BI scorecards matter? What is their importance? Second objective, if you never tried this before, what are the steps to set up your first Power BI scorecard? Third step, we really want to go to deep dive and some advanced considerations for scorecard building. From a technical point of view, looking at the report that will feed the scorecard, and then on the scorecard building, how do these two interlink? We'll discuss about the implementation strategy linked to the point I mentioned. That means that this is a top management tool. And we finalize with a recap or some key takeaways, okay? So let's get started. The first point, why scorecards? Well, maybe a lot of you, if you had conversations with stakeholders, and you maybe have the use of the word report or dashboards on a little bit different context. Sometimes, in my experience, I see a lot of people calling a dashboard to something that is a report. Most that is the case, and because maybe the concept is not entirely clear for everyone. And now we even have this other concept, especially on Power BI, that is the scorecard. So let's start with trying to clear up some of the confusion and misconception around this. So an image of a proposal, what I would call a report, an image of something I would call a dashboard, and an image on something I would call a scorecard based on the layout principles and the organization of the information. Why is that? So I want to try to help you with some definitions. For instance, a report. A report, in terms of definition, very simply can be a document that presents information in an organized format for a specific audience and purpose. Imagine the case that you might have a report which just has text, doesn't have visuals. It's perfectly possible. You'll say this is a financial report. This is a governmental report. There is a study that is a report. So the report can actually not have graphics. We are very used to calling a report because it's the name of the Power BI artifact, the PBIX. It's a report. But in terms of international convention, a report is a document that presents information in an organized format for a specific audience and purpose. Think about a dashboard. Why does this image can bring you to a dashboard? Well, a dashboard should be a visual display of all your data, and it can be used in different ways, but it's basically data at a glance, a way for you to visualize KPIs at a glance. Very simply. So, differences between a dashboard and a report. What can you think about it? For instance, a dashboard, if it has just one page, usually it will be a dashboard and not a report. If it has multiple pages, it's a report, it's not a dashboard. A dashboard, you want to take a look at the page, you want to take really insights and see that without having to scroll between different pages, without having to interact with slicers, with filters. So that's one of the key differences between a report and a dashboard, okay? Then we also have the scorecard element, which provides a relevant range of financial and non-financial information that supports effective business management. Is this confusing? Well, a dashboard, you can actually maybe do this. You can have different elements pinned to a dashboard you can use to do this, to financial, not financial information, supporting effective business management. But the scorecard is usually very high-level key performance indicators that you can use that supports the steering of the business. And a term to state that it's not only financial or non-financial information, it's because it's very usual for an organization to focus just on the financials. You have different indicators coming from the profit and loss statement, from the balance sheet, from the cash flows. You have the stock indicators, so you can focus a lot on those, on the revenues, etc. But there are other indicators which also give you a view of the company's health and the company's growth for growth stocks. So, a concept of balanced scorecard. This is something that I also want to bring to your information, because the balanced scorecard contains information not only financial but also from other domains. For instance, from the customer perspective, are we increasing the number of customers? Are we having like customer churn? There are also KPIs that come from the learning focuses. Are we improving in the way from our mistakes? Are we an innovative firm? Are we progressing on that? So on the learning focus. Also on the process focus, if we are really performing on the process, the times that we can deliver something. Imagine if you are delivering next day, if you are delivering in hours, how does our process focus with the costs and everything? So process focus is also another very important dimension for a balanced scorecard. Okay, so consider all this when you are going to set up your first scorecard. So let's go to that and I'll guide you through a little bit. Important point to mention. So before everything else, what you need to use scorecards in terms of licensing. So goals was originally a premium feature, but I believe since about 2 months ago, there was a blog post, and in the link you will find it also there, stating that Power BI Goals is a pro feature, and if you create a Power BI Pro workspace, you will be able to use the Goals feature. So what can you do? You can basically, with the Power BI Pro license, you can alter the scorecards. You can create a scorecard, Then if you want to share with stakeholders the scorecard you created, it works a little bit like the normal licensing, meaning if you are a content creator with Pro, you can share with Pro users in a Pro workspace. If you are deploying in a premium capacity user as a Pro user, the users can take advantage of the premium capacity, and they can be Power BI free users and can access the capacity that is already paid, and they can access the scorecard there, okay? So Pro to Pro, or Pro publishing to Premium, and then free users can access it. That is the licensing way. What are the components of a Power BI scorecard? You have here a sample image of what we can build in the Power BI service in the cloud. I have an example that we are going to work today that has it's kind of a balanced scorecard. It has information on financials, has information on customer, learning and growth, and internal business processes. In each of them, you will be able to find some sub-KPIs there and there. You will be able to find the values of the KPI, for instance, in this section here. You also have the target. You can see here the value plus the target, 9.23 versus 8.22 million. Who is the owner? You have here, you can assign, as the creator, you can assign different owners to each of the KPIs. What is the due date? You will find it here too. And the status of the KPIs. If it's going well, if we have any trouble, we also have it available here. So this is the key elements of a Power BI scorecard. Let's go to see things moving in Power BI. I don't want to tire you from that to PowerPoint. I want to make an interactive demo. So let's go to Power BI service. So here I am, and you can see here I have access to multiple workspaces. I have specifically what is called a Pro workspace. You can see here, you don't have the premium icon, and I have a Goals demo workspace created. So in this, I can create a new scorecard. You click New, and as you could create a new report or a new data set, you can also create a scorecard. So let's create a new one. Okay, so let's create a scorecard. Create with my description, my demo, and I will be able to create it in this same workspace. I could create a new one for the purpose. And in there, I can create, for instance, a goal. So I could create one which would be the profit. I can assign the owner, state the value, the target, the start and end date, and save it. Okay, this is very simple. We could create a scorecard from scratch. You can see how now here manual inputs in the values that I have. I will show you how to automate these two, and I can continuously create new goals and so on and create. I don't want to do a new one from scratch. I want to show you a way that we can develop a product which would be very much like a balanced scorecard product for a corporation. So I'll go back to our workspace, and I have already here prepared a sample of the balanced scorecard. So I will click on it, and you have here exactly the scorecard I just demonstrated in the PowerPoint. And we can see that in the financial area, we have everything empty. So what can we do? We also have some values already here. You can see how we are in number of customers. You can see new customers on board and so on. We have also we are a consulting firm, and we want in the learning and growth to have more Power BI DA100, now the new PL300 certified people, MVP members, solution architects, and so on. Some KPIs of learning and growth. So in the financial area, what I can do, I can click Edit in my scorecard, and I can continue developing. I can create a new goal. For instance, I will create one which will going to be my revenue year to date. And in my revenue, I can place the start date. So let's say it's 1 of January, and my end date is going to be 31st of December. So I can create it, but it's not in the right position. So I can drag it, and I can bring it. Let me bring it up. You can see I can nest it. I can drag it to be a sub KPI of my financials, and the color automatically adjusts. That's a great way to organize things. You can nest it in multiple levels, I believe at least 4 levels. You can also click here on the financials and also add a sub goal. It will take the same effect. For instance, I also want to have a profit year to date KPI. And so the dates will also be from 1st of January, and the end date will be not too much, end of year. I have another one. Let's create just a final one, another sub goal. This one will be based on the market share percentage. And I also want that the dates are fixed. So from 1st of January until 31st of December. Okay, so I have the form of my scorecard created. I could have done this for the entire set of KPIs that you are able to see here. And then I will be able, for instance, the market share, I will later on move it to the customer because it makes sense to be in the customer section. For now, we'll be working on these 3, and I will leave this here together, okay? So let's try to, first of all, I can go to the read mode, and now I'm not editing the scorecard. I could, as a user, I could click here, and I could make different check-ins, meaning that manually I could come here and input the values if I don't have a report which can automatically feed this. So let me start with a couple of values. Let's say that in the 31st of January, the value would be 0.125. Another one in end of February, let's sample this with a couple of values, 0.131. Another one in March, for instance, in the end of March, I'll put another value 0.127 so that there is some variation up and down. And you can see here the chart automatically plotting our variation here with the check-ins of the users. Let's continue just 2 or 3 more. In April, let's say that in the end of first week, I would have 0.128. In another date, for instance, in April, in the 15th, I would have, let's put it 0.129. And I'll also want to include a note, almost there. I'll save the status. You can see here that I can also add comments as a stakeholder. And a final one, let's put it here in the end of April. Let's make it in the last day, just to finalize this 0.128. And we are done. Okay. So we can see our chart created. We're able to do check-ins and we are able to do comments. As I did this, you will see that I have here like a kind of a small line, spark line, that I am able to see the trend being updated. Let me go to my edit mode, and if you click on it, you will see that I have a couple of properties on this. I have, for instance, the details where I just had the check-ins. I can see the history updates and the variation changes from one update to the other one. I can also see the different statuses. I will do this later to demonstrate it to you too. And I have settings on the tracking frequency, meaning that I can track this KPI, for instance, on a daily basis, or I could do it on a monthly basis. Let me explain what this means exactly. I want to track this just for the Spark line precisely, let's say on the 31st of each month. A message will come that for months with lower days than you selected, the cycle will fall on the last day of the month. No problem with the 28th of February and so on. Nice to have. And I want to track it on a monthly basis. So I'll track this. And as you can see, if I will click now to refresh, I will click a refresh in the page here and take a look at what will happen here in the Spark line. So you see, the trend has changed because now it's just demonstrating the evolution on each end of month and not on a daily basis. So if I click here, you are able to see still the values, but the Spark line updated the value. I can click on it again and I change the settings saying that I want to track this on a daily basis, and it will mimic each of the values that I have here and I will be able to track it. So I will refresh it again and you will see that the Spark line has changed. Basically, with this day-to-day, it doesn't make too much sense because I don't have data points for it of the values. So I'm going to revert it back. I want this to keep as a monthly cycle. And this is the way that I want to visualize my Spark line. Okay. So this is the tracking cycle tool. Let's do something also. Another property is I want to also change, I will edit this market share and zero. This number doesn't make sense in this format, so I'll format it as percentage and I will save it. Much better now, 12.8%, our last value, and it's comparing to the previous month, no evolution. It looks now much better on this point. So another thing that we can do is we have mapped this manually, but of course the ideal is to have automation. But at least this way you can, without having a report, you can start to plug some values and the stakeholders can do that, and then you'll be able to automate this. Another point I want to do, let's see in the revenue, for instance, in the revenue, I will place a value, I think if I'm not wrong, I'll place something like 23 million. And as a target, I will place 25 million. Let's try with this. I will save it, and I'm 23 out of 25. And now the other thing I'm going to configure is the status rules. So as you can see here, let me refresh. In the status rules, I could update manually saying that, okay, the status is overdue, it's behind it at risk, but I want this to be automated. So I can set up rules here. I can click on it and I can say a new rule. So if the value is greater than 100% of my target, then the status is going to be on track. A new rule, if the value is greater than 90%, erase this one, then the status is going to be at risk. Otherwise, it's going to be behind. So let me save it. And save it, and you will see, okay, right now it identified that I'm somewhere between 90 and 100% of the target, so I'm at risk. If my value would, let me get it here, if my value would change to 26, for instance, and I would save it, you will see that automatically my KPI is now on track. All right. So if I refresh this, you can see here also on the goals, a summarized view of the statuses. How many goals we have, what is the status of each of them, how many are on track, how many are at risk and not started, and so on, which is also a nice feature to add. Now we are starting to populate our scorecard, but we actually have a report to connect our data. So I'll open a report in Power BI Desktop. The report is actually going to feed this. And we have a very simple page. We have some KPIs on the top, the revenue year to date, the target, our customers, the market share. We have also a chart which shows the evolution of the revenue and the target as a line. So you have the revenue here, and we have the targets below. It seems like we are doing well. We have a couple of other pages that I will show you in a second just for the demonstration purposes, but this is our key page that we'll use in the report. So going back to the Power BI service, when I have actually a report ready, what I can do is I can connect directly, for instance, the values of my revenue year to date. I can edit it. Oops. Let me edit my revenue year to date. And I have a button to connect to data, which is very nice. So I can connect to data. And I will go to my scorecard demo report. I can find any report that I have access to as a content builder and use it, navigate to this scorecard. And then when I have a navigation, just as I have opened the report, and I can point any of the elements in the scorecard to select the KPI. So I'll click here. And it says, okay, is this a value you want, 27 million? I'll say, okay, this is the one, connect. For the target, the same thing. I will connect to my same report, and I will point to the card with my target. 23, I'll connect, and I'll save it. And boom, this KPI is updated. Now I see that I'm at 27.02 versus 23.85. This KPI is automated. Tomorrow it will be updated again. I will explain also the refresh cadence on the data set. Let's take care now of the market share. I will edit the market share. It ran away again. Let me edit the market share, and I want to connect to data. I will connect to it. And now I want to connect, but I don't have my market share here. But I have a second page that actually someone did a trick, which is to create two buttons on top of the revenue and on the market share. What happens? When you click on the revenue, it changes the chart to show here the chart of revenue. When you click on market share, it changes the chart, so the visuals, it's a trick with the bookmarks, and the visual is showing now the market share. The problem is I cannot click in the KPI because there is a button on the top. So a key consideration, you need to be able to click in the element to actually be able to edit and link the scorecard to it. So I'm not able to do it. However, I can use directly the chart I have here, you can see it, to connect to the value. I would be able to connect and get a 13.5, but this is not actually what I want. I want to follow each data point. To do that, what I can do is to drill down and go to actual values on the date. So I have all the values on the date. I can click here. And you see I have now a new option on the market share to track all the data in this time series or just the data point. I can track either of them. So I'll do the same thing for the two. I'll track all the data points in the market share. So let me connect to it. Then I will connect also to the target. So let me go to, I think it was the second page. I'll drill down to get at the date level, click on the chart, select average market share target, and track all the data in the time series. So I'll connect to it. And now I can save it. And this KPI, the market share, is fully updated. So you see, and when I click on it, you will see that now I have all the data points already ready in my chart. How cool is that? It's very cool. If eventually you did some mistake or you want to reconnect it to something else, you can go to the settings and you have options, for instance, to disconnect for instance, for the current value or also for the target value. I can also have an option to disconnect it here. So I could disconnect it and reconnect it to another report. That's an option to do. So we just have one final KPI to map, which is the profit. The problem is that my profit does not exist directly in any of the visuals that I have here in the report. So I could not connect to it for the profit. There is, however, an option, which is if in the Power BI options and settings, if you activate, let me remember where it is, data load, report settings. Okay, this one here, in the report settings, I can activate this option to allow report readers to personalize visuals to their needs. So if there was was actually possible and activated. This means that you will then be able to see, and you can configure this visual by visual if it's active or not, but it will be possible for the end user to click on this button here and then to configure specifically the visual. So let me explain how this translates in the Power BI service. Now I want to connect my profit year to date, but I don't have the KPI, so I will connect to data, scorecard demo, profit year to date, and I wanted actually this the profit year to date. So I can pick a KPI, I can click in the personalize, theoretically, yeah, and so in the card, in the values, I want to add not the revenue year to date, but I want the profit year to date. It's not working. Let's try here. Let me try to personalize this. In the axis, values, add a new field, and I should be able to add the profit. I think this is actually a bug, and I'm not able to add it here. Let me try again on this one. Sometimes there are these small bugs in the terms of the interaction, because it's not directly possible to, the experience in clicking, you see, now I was able to click on it, but sometimes it's not perfect. It's something that needs to be improved. So I will click on this. And now I have personalized the visual. I can actually connect now to the profit year to date. Okay, so I'll click on it using the card. So my profit year to date is now, through the feature of personalization, I could get the KPI that exists in the model, but not in the report. I can do the same thing for the target. Let me try on this one. Instead of revenue target, I will personalize this one if everything goes well. Go here. So instead of revenue year to date, it will be my profit year to date target. Then I will click on it, connect, and save. So my profit year to date now it's also fully automated. And I can see that I'm 5.07 versus 4.77. So everything is okay, and we'll be able to finalize this. I will move the market share to the customer KPIs, and our scorecard is built and fully automated for the different KPIs that we have. All right? So up to this point, any question, feel free to jump in now. Question from Kumar Tom. Is it set up the personalized visuals in the workspace setting and desktop? So you need to set up in the desktop at report level, the option I shown, and then you can also select if you want that option available for all the visuals or just for a couple of them. You can personalize that at visual level. When you publish to the service, then the visuals that you allow the personalization, you will be able to pick any field from the model into the visual, and then consequently also bring that as I demonstrated for the scorecard. Okay. Okay, so I think that was the only question so far. So let's go to the next part. So some advanced considerations in the scorecard building. As we have seen, regarding the type of chart, there are some things to consider. I will show you more in a second. The report tile placement, you need to be able to click on an actual tile with the KPI to be able to connect to the scorecard. So this is something that needs to be in consideration. If you need also to go down to date level, that's something that the date column is good to have available, and not just, for instance, the year or the month. Other thing is plus is good versus less is good, meaning that if you have a KPI like compliance and the value is 98%, if the value from one month to the other changes from 98% to 98.5%, in the current format, it will say that you increased 0.5%. and then it's a positive variation. It's better to have it this way for the scorecard experience than to have otherwise a percentage of non-compliance. Your value would be 2%, and in the next month it would be 1.5%, which is actually good that you decrease the non-compliance. But the scorecard, we see that as something negative. It looks like that your process decreased while it's actually improved. So the recommendation right now is you cannot specify if it's better to have more or less. The better is to have the KPI configured as increasing is good. We have also seen the option for visual personalization, and we have not seen on the scorecard refresh. I'll show you in a second. So I want to go back to Power BI service and show you something about the types of cards and on the scorecard refresh. So going back to the service, so types of charts, I have here another page. For instance, if I want to connect, let me pick any KPI here. And let's say I wanted to connect this to my report. Okay, I have here another page which has, for instance, it has tables, and it has a table and it has a matrix. Okay, so what happens when you click? Also, it has a multi-row card. So when you click on a multi-row card, before it was not possible, but now you can just select any of the measures that you have in your multi-score card, in multi-row card, so it's good. What happens if you click, for instance, here in the table visual, if you click on a specific cell, the filters that will be passed will be the values. For instance, you can select the measure, but the filters on the year will be passed in the same way as they are in the context of the visual, okay? So if you don't want to specify that, you can click here in the total, you see, and now I can specify without filters of year and month being passed to my scorecard. So something to consider too. I could select any of them, you see, and the value properly is affected. In a matrix, it's exactly the same thing. I can click here, and my context, for instance, I have a year 2021, it will be passed for my scorecard. So consideration, think also on the types of visuals that you are going to use in order to allow the construction of scorecards on top of your reports. Another point too is that, as you've seen, we have created a scorecard, but behind the scenes, there was also a data set created. You see here my balanced scorecard data set. And I could do a couple more things. For instance, let me go back. In my balanced scorecard, if I go to my settings, and let's say normally on a data set, you would configure the schedule refresh, right? So I have it here, and I would configure it. So basically, you don't need a gateway connection for this data set because the connection behind the scenes of each of the KPIs already relates to the connection behind the original data set of the report and not on the data set of the scorecard. So you don't need to configure this. Your data will just, you need to configure the frequency that you wanted up to date on your scorecard. And you don't need to set up a gateway connection specifically for this scorecard. So that's something to have in mind too. Going back to the presentation, there are a couple of other functionalities. For instance, let's take a look at customized columns and role settings. So I will show you these two. Customized columns and role settings. Going back to the scorecard, what I can do is, for instance, in my edit view, you see here I have a property column settings in my drop-down. And I can say that I don't want to see, for instance, let's say the status. I can remove it. And it disappeared from here. I can just bring it back. So it's just a feature to configure the order that you want the columns. You can drag and drop the columns, and you can remove a couple of them in your scorecard view. That's something. Another option too that we can do is, for instance, in the scorecard, I can go to the settings here. And I can configure also on the permissions. Let me go. I can add a role. I think I already have one here created, financials. And you see, I can create a specific role and add a few role members here that just have access, for instance, for the KPIs on the finance. So I can add them here, or I can say they have access to financials plus all of the customer KPIs. I could do this. I can create any number of roles, just in the same way as you would create roles for the role level security in Power BI. So you can do that, save it, and then assign roles. So a scorecard can have kind of a role level security roles in it too. It's a nice feature too. Another one is that you can access this in your mobile. So if you open Power BI in mobile application, you will also be able to scroll down, and in the same way as you would open a report or a dashboard, you can also open the goals, which is really nice to also have it on the go, so it works very well. A final feature is that you can also, on a PBIX, if I add here a new page, you can also, here in the visualizations, you have a visual here, scorecards. I can click on it, and it says, do you want to sign in to the Power BI service? I could sign in, and then I can add, for instance, I can connect directly to my scorecard and bring it here to Power BI desktop. What can I do with it? Well, you can just personalize a couple of things like you see here. For instance, the background color, if you want this header visible or not, this header, a couple of options too, or you can have in one single report, multiple scorecards connected there. It's just another option. Personally, I don't see a very good reason for doing this, but it's definitely possible if you have a use case for it too, okay? So on this part, any questions so far? I'll give it a few seconds to see. Okay, so raise hand, go ahead.
Hi, Pedro. I have a question about the role settings. For instance, if we select the connect to the data option, and there is the role level security applied, is it role level security is inherited into the scorecards also?
So it's a good question. So for instance, what happens is, as you can see here, I go to read mode. When you have this configuration on the scorecard value, you will be able then to navigate into the report. When you click on it, you go to the actual report where you have that. So what will happen when you go to the report? If you don't have, if you have access to the scorecard, you'll be able to see the value, but then you will not be able to land on the report if you don't have access to the report. But you'll still be able to see the generic value on the scorecard. Okay. Then you have the separate roles, like I explained, to means which parts of the scorecard you will be able to see. Did I answer your question?
But this role which we apply to the scorecards, it's like hiding on relevant sub goals, sub cards.
Let's say that we created the financial KPIs role, meaning that even if I have all this in here and I grant to your user the financial KPIs, you will be able to see just this part.
Okay.
Then the intrinsic data access, for instance, here, you'll see this value. But if you click here to go to the report, it then will depend on the role level security of the specific report itself and not on the scorecard properties, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So couple of other things. Implementation strategy. So you've seen the potential of the scorecards. How can you have it implemented in your organization? So this, as I mentioned, this is a top management feature because usually it gathers information from multiple reports in a high level view. So step one, my suggestion for the workflow of creating this is creating the vision, meaning that creating awareness that it's possible not just to create reports or scorecards, but actually to create a scorecard directly in Power BI with numerous possibilities. So this is step one. And top management, many times the scorecards will be in some kind of platform or even in Excel. So it's possible to create it here, just for the management to define the vision, write the KPIs that we want to track. And then even if it's automated or not, what can we do? Well, step two, we can assign it to the owners of each of the areas. And then after assigning to an owner, to each goal, the values can be updated on a periodical basis. We see here someone updating manually the number of headcounts that we have in the company. So it's possible to do this. Then it will depend on the owner, the step 3, the automation. If I am the owner of the KPI, I can launch an initiative so that I will be able to have a report, and then it will be possible to connect the value, not having to update this manually, and feed my report as I should and I want to do, saving a lot of time and having the values automatically directly from a report. Okay. So step 3 is the automation from each owner. Step 4 is the ownership, meaning that as I go to Power BI service, each of the owners of KPIs will have a personalized landing page where you see all the KPIs from all the scorecards that I'm an owner to. Let me demonstrate that. If I go here to my goals section, and you can see here a couple of recommended KPIs. Don't take too much on these values, meaning that I can see some values here on KPIs that I am assigned as the owner, and I can see some scorecards recently that I have access to. So if you can have access to multiple scorecards, and you have your landing page where you track the ones that are assigned to you with you as the owner. That's something also that facilitates, and it's very good. So step 4, the ownership and tracking your KPIs and updating the statuses and all the report things. Resources to study more. There isn't a lot of places where you can go to. There is a Microsoft documentation, which has a lot of things. It gets updated frequently, so it's really nice, and you have it there. There is what I didn't cover here was also the integration between Power BI goals in Power BI in Power Automate. It's also possible to do. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out. It's definitely possible to do and to trigger some actions according to the values of the scorecard, or to trigger changes in the scorecard values in automation according to report changes or some triggers. So definitely possible. You can check it out. There isn't a lot of sessions also on this topic. There are a couple of them also, but not too much on a deep dive on a technical level. So I hope this was interesting for you as we went a bit more on the technical level too. But not too many resources yet to study. We have a question. Please go ahead.
Hi, Pedro.
Hi, Shastri.
Hi. A question for you. If I apply row-level security on my Power BI report, does that cascade into goals? Sorry, someone is speaking.
Ja, okay, das ist aber nicht schlimm. Das geht gleich hin. Ich guck gleich.
Dann gehen wir durch die andere Tür.
Ja.
Hello, Shastri. I think I was able to understand your question.
Yeah.
So I think that who can build the scorecard? Basically, you need someone which has actual access to the intrinsic reports that you need to connect to your scorecard, right? So actually, the row-level security that the developer has to access the scorecards will be the one that will be applied in the construction of the scorecard.
Okay, what about the views? Suppose I apply row-level security to my reports, and someone that I'm showing this to from my management, if they do not have that access in the Power BI report, will they be able to see it in the scorecard or no?
They see the value in the scorecard, but then they are not able to go to the report if they don't have the access, or they will land on the report and they see nothing because they don't have access.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for the comment. They see the value on the scorecard, but as you see, it's just the value. They have the access to the artifact of the scorecard, but then they cannot go to the report to see the value. Usually, because this is a top management feature, it's usually that people that have the rights for the scorecard, if it's something like a balanced scorecard, they usually have rights for most of the data domains in the company, or otherwise, hence the feature of creating different roles. If you have a scorecard which has, like the 4 areas I shown, you can segregate the access to that so that you only the members that have finance data or customer data have the right access to see it, even in the scorecard. Okay. So doing a session recap, if there is any more question, we have also a few minutes also to discuss, and we can stay here for a bit longer. So session recap, we discussed about why do Power BI scorecards matter. We saw the difference between a report, a dashboard, and a scorecard, and we've seen how to build a first Power BI scorecard. Then on the creation, we saw the components, how to set up the value, the target, the due date, the status, the owner, and to move the different layers from a nested hierarchy, like a goal and a sub-goal. We also did manual mode updates and check-ins, and then we were able to fully automate it with connecting to existing reports. Advanced considerations. We saw about the permissions on the scorecard itself. We saw about the permissions on the report that is linked to the scorecard. We saw the goal visuals on Power BI Desktop. We saw the refresh dataset properties that doesn't need a gateway connection. We saw the access permissions for the scorecard. We talked about the licensing that you need just Pro to use this feature. And we talked about things like it's better to have KPIs that having more is good. And also the importance on features like the report tab placement so that the developer can click on the items to connect to the scorecard. Implementation strategy, finalized with that, showing that it's important to create awareness, create a top-down vision and the sponsorship of top management, and grant the ownership with the owners. And even if you don't have everything automated, you can start manually, do check-ins and updates. And when your report is ready, you can fully automate it, as I've shown, and all the values of the history will be brought back and bring to life to your report. So I thank you. I hope you enjoyed this session. It was a bit on the business side. It was a bit technical too. And here are my contacts, and I'm here for a few minutes also for any other question that might come and that you had during the session.
Thank you, Pedro. This was a really interesting session. So if anybody has a questions, feel free to unmute yourself to raise it in the chat. So Pedro will try to pick it up.
Absolutely.
Chat, let's see. So if you want to go back to the session, if you want to do the recap yourself on your own pace, you will be able to find the entire session on our YouTube channel in a matter of few days. So just as soon as I get some time for editing and everything. And
sometimes takes some time in the processing, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it takes time, and it's for all of us running user groups. As you know, we are just volunteers next to our regular job, so it's sometimes tough to schedule those kind of things. And if you didn't check our YouTube channel, so as I said, this session as well will be there in a couple of days. And next week we have a Ben Ferry, next week after that, sorry, 25th of May. If we have someone for next week, we had some cancellations, I'll post it up on Meetup and or our social channels, so you will be updated. So if there are no additional questions, I want to thank you, Pedro, for your time and effort spending afternoon with us. And all of you who joined for your time, and hope to see you all next week.
Thanks, everyone, and hope to see you building some scorecards really soon.
Hope to see you, Pedro, again on some in-person event soon.
Absolutely. Let's do that. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you. Have a nice evening or rest of the day.
Thank you, Agustin. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a nice evening too. Cheers. Bye-bye.